A day after the cabinet reshuffle, if there is one aspect everyone's trying to figure out, it's what eventually led to the dropping of Smriti Irani as Education Minister. In her tenure of 2 years, she's had more than her share of controversies and run-ins with the academia, with the IITs, with the IIMs, campuses, students, and it's led to a whole lot of bad press and bad blood. While most of those she crossed, or even others in the academia, are wary of speaking up against her, there is one historian who has written cutting critiques and never been afraid to speak his mind on anything. Ram Guha joins us now from Bangalore on this major headline. Ram Guha, thank you so much for speaking to NDTV. First up, did you expect this?
Well, I live far away from Delhi, and so I'm not privy to the gossip and chat there. So I can't say I expected it, but I think I speak for the larger academic community when I say I welcome this. I said some days ago that Smriti Irani was a deadly combination of ignorance and arrogance. And Mr. Javadekar is certainly not arrogant. He's a very polite, courteous individual and minister. And judging by his background and the fact that his children are doing PhDs, I suspect at least he respects scholarship and scientists. Now, it's an open question as to how much positive change he would bring about. But Smriti Irani had clearly damaged the credibility of the education ministry enormously, and it was past time that she went.
You know, it's interesting you say ignorance and arrogance combination of that, because I remember in your piece, which you wrote after she'd completed a year in her ministry, and you said that many people have problems with the fact that Smriti Irani doesn't have those academic credentials, but you didn't really have a problem with that aspect. But yet you say, how do you say her ignorance came through then?
You see, because as I said, I don't care what degrees you have, but you must make a sincere attempt. She didn't make any attempt to understand the functioning of our universities. If you take both Hyderabad and JNU, it is true that there are some social science departments dominated by Marxists, whom for good reason you may dislike. But it's also true that both Hyderabad and JNU have first-rate science faculties. The last Vice Chancellor of Hyderabad University was one of our finest physicists. JNU has one of the best departments of genetics and biology. Now, before you meddle around with universities, because some historians are Marxists or some social scientists are leftists or a student union president is someone you don't like, you have to think of the impact it may have on deep and serious scientific research carried on in those same universities. So, clearly, she made no attempt to understand her portfolio, the nuances of her job. She made little attempt to reach out to heads of institutions. To the contrary, as I know from eyewitness accounts, she was extremely arrogant and offhand in her dealing with IIT and IIM directors. But I think, now it's done. She is gone. Now we have to look to the future. It's important that Mr. Javadekar stays focused. It's important that he is consultative, that he respects our quality institutions. He seeks to take them to the next step rather than undermine them because of petty party politics. And above all, it's important that he does not take directions from the RSS.
And do you see that happening? Because some people...
I don't know, yeah.
Some people are pointing out that the reason why Smriti Irani, my colleague Rahul Srivastav has been speaking to people, and some people have pointed out that the reason perhaps why Smriti Irani may have been, this is of course all in the realm of speculation, may have been moved out is because she wasn't carrying out RSS's agenda as quickly as they would have liked to. So she initially had the backing, and we all remember those very famous visuals of her meetings with RSS members that were held outside the HRD ministry as well. So this RSS agenda that you're saying, which shouldn't happen, do you think that's perhaps the agenda that Prakash Javadekar has been sent with?
I don't know. I can't, I would not like to speculate because I said I live far away from Delhi. You see, the RSS is an important stakeholder in this government. It's also, whether you like it or not, an important social organization with many members. So certainly they should be consulted, but they shouldn't dominate. I think they particularly with our quality institutions. You know, this is a time when it's very fashionable and convenient to mock and scorn Jawaharlal Nehru. But the few quality institutions we have, such as the IITs, the IIMs, the TIFRs, the Indian Institute of Sciences, were all nurtured or furthered or started by him. Even when they were started by somebody else, like the Institute of Science in Bangalore, it was taken forward by Jawaharlal Nehru. One of the things that Smriti Irani did was to try and scrap the Indian Institute of Science's outstanding undergraduate program and make it on par with the universities, whereas it's a cut above. So I think Mr. Javadekar can certainly meet the RSS, he can listen to them, but not subscribe to their antediluvian reactionary ideology which glorifies the past, which has some atavistic notion of Hindu pride, rather than knowledge trying to meet, research trying to meet the complex challenges of the 21st century, for which there are no answers in the Veda, and no answers in the Bible, and no answers in the Quran, and no answers in Karl Marx's Das Kapital either. You know, so I think it's important that the finest minds in India, who are in the IITs, the IIMs, the JNUs, the Hyderabad universities, these are people who are consulted in framing quality education policies. One last example I'll give you.
Yes.
Which is to do with school education. Absolutely the finest non-partisan educational NGO in the school space is Pratham, which, by the way, the Marxists didn't like, because the Marxists who were in control had to didn't like Pratham because of its open, innovative, modern methods. But Smriti Irani got into her head that Pratham is a Congress group, which is as far from the truth as can be possible. Anyone who has worked in education knows the quality of the research done by Pratham and their annual survey of education reports. They are impartial, world class, and really shine a spotlight on the problem with school education and teacher absenteeism, the problems curriculum, learning deficiencies. And any sensible education minister would consult Pratham first of all in reforming school education. And I hope Mr. Javadekar does that.
Well, that's very insightful, Ramgua. And you know, you're giving us these instances, and the problem is that many people who are perhaps having problems with the education minister in the sector were afraid to speak up about it. In your column as well, and even now you mentioned, you know, her arrogance and how her interactions, her rudeness, with several heads of departments or heads of institutes, IITs and IIMs. Are there other instances that you can share with us? Because we know, like for instance, Professor Shivgaonkar of the Delhi IIT, he quit, he resigned, he hasn't spoken since then. But there were always rumors, lots of people saying that there was an interaction, there was a meeting which didn't go down well at all. Is there anything that you would have access to, you know, what actually happened there that you can share with us?
You know, Smriti, I feel empathy from my colleagues in universities. I am fortunate that I'm outside the university system. I used to be in the university system, I still interact with it, but I make my living through my books and my columns. So, you know, my salary doesn't come from HRD. My retirement benefits are not dependent on the HRD. But there are very outstanding scientists, particularly in the IITs and the IIMs, who don't have my autonomy, who are not as fortunate as me, but who deeply feel were deeply hurt by the cutting treatment of the HRD minister. Take Dr. Kakodkar, who built, one of the people who built our nuclear program, who was chair of the IIT selection committee and whom she treated with contempt, and then he resigned with dignity. Unlike someone like me, unlike a historian like myself who also writes a column, scientists are very reserved. You know, they keep their grievances and their discontent to themselves. It makes it, you know, it makes me even more upset. There's another example I know from an eyewitness who was at the meeting, where a respected director of an IIT asked her a question. And she said, "Do you think you're a TV anchor that you're questioning me?" Now, this is verbatim an eyewitness account. And that particular TV anchor was also named, which trivialized it even more. So the point is, I can speak out because I'm in Bangalore, because I'm not beholden to the HRD ministry or minister for my salary, my promotion, my career prospects, my publishers. But others who suffer much more because they are directly in the institutions. They have spent 30 or 40 years building their programs, their curriculum, working with students, guiding graduate research, and then they find themselves humiliated by an HRD minister. I feel deeply anguished, and any thinking citizen of India should feel deeply anguished. And I think Mr. Javadekar hopefully will take all these lessons on board.
I know, Ram Guha, you said that you can't speculate, but we can only look at what's happened and draw some kind of an inference from it. So I just want to go back to specifics about whether there is a saffronization agenda or not, which many people in the government, Smriti Irani has always denied it. Her deputy, who has also been dropped, by the way, Minister of State Kateria, he had openly said and come on record and said, yes, of course, what's wrong with saffronization? And, you know, we should have that kind of an agenda. So he's been dropped as well. Are there instances from just of the initiatives that you've taken that you see that there is a saffronization agenda in the education sector, or perhaps there isn't? What do you make from the initiatives that you've seen by this government?
You know, clearly there is some attempt at saffronization. But in the case of the two visible university controversies, Hyderabad Central University and JNU, both of which were escalated by Smriti Irani and her, and her colleagues in the ministry. In both those cases, it was not the RSS, but the Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad that was dictating the policy of the HRD ministry. You know, the ABVP was angry that it didn't do well in the JNU student elections. Likewise in Hyderabad. And it was their complaints and their protests that prompted, you know, the HRD minister and then the government, and in one case the police, to act and escalated the whole thing. So whether you are being led by the ABVP, which is your student wing, or the RSS, which is your, you know, whatever, part of your Sangh Parivar, you know, that's a mistake. Education policy should be dictated by the complex challenges of the 21st century as India modernizes, industrializes, urbanizes, as young people want quality education, that to keep pace with the changing times, that they want jobs. You know, one of the real ironies, let me make one more point. You know, when we reflect on the mistakes made by this government in education, we should not give a free pass to the last government. The Congress government was also nepotistic. It promoted its own chamchas. It glorified the Nehru-Gandhi family. And the decline in the higher education system goes back 20 or 30 years. Smriti Irani may have intensified it, but the rot had set in well before. And it's a true, as a historian like myself, it's a matter of great irony and some shame that China, which is a totalitarian country, 20 years ago, Chinese universities were inferior to us. And in theory, universities and free knowledge flourishes in democracies. But now Chinese universities are better than ours because their politicians don't try and indoctrinate professors. But ours do. So I think it is a moment for us to reflect on how we've damaged even our quality institutions, and how going forward, modern cutting-edge knowledge, rather than some imaginary ancient wisdom, is, you know, how to build and nurture scientific research and talent in this country.